We got a pretty full house here. Welcome, everybody. So you'll have to keep me on task with online comments. But and so everybody knows, we're also streaming this on the internet. It's a hybrid. So there'll be people that might chime in on the internet. As they do, I'll try to relay their questions, and we'll just another way to reach some more people. So been doing this for a while, these hybrids, they work really well. We'll get started here in just a minute. Got a couple people online there too. And yeah, this is for our hearing impaired folks. And for those that can't understand my ramblings, or hopefully the computer can decipher them for you, or my I talk way too fast sometimes. Tell me to slow down, and I'll slow down. I'm also drinking coffee, which is not a good thing for you. All right, looks like we got a couple people online. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. That's all right with everybody. Everybody get a chance to grab one of the handouts. Looks like everybody's got a handout. Great. It's got some good info. We'll talk about what's in there when we get into the presentation. So, well, everybody, welcome to the Solar 101 Cuyahoga County Co-op presentation. My name is Tristan Rader. I'm the Ohio Program Director for SUN, Solar United Neighbors, and we have Valerie here, who's the Sustainability Assistant Director or Manager. Not quite sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Deputy Director for Sustainability for the county. And thank you for being here. And they've been phenomenal partners in letting us do this work. And we'll get into that here in a minute, what that work is. Basically, we'll cover 3 different things here today. And I'm a big fan of choose your own adventure. So if you have any issues with audio, if you have any questions at all, please stop me. If you want to talk a little bit more about maybe batteries, we can get into that if we have some time. But feel free to ask questions. It'll kind of guide our journey today. If you're online, feel free to submit questions through the chat. And just so you know, this is being recorded. It may be played in whole or in part on our website if it's a good info session. We'll see. If I don't get too personal, we may be able to reuse it somehow. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We work with solar installers, we work with cities, we work with people. Our whole goal is to help people join together and fight for their energy rights. And we want to help that group go solar too. Dave's a good example. I'm going to point out you a lot, Dave. Went to the co-op a little while back and did 2 homes, one home in Lakewood and also his rental in Avon. So we help people come together and actually help them go solar if they choose. But at the very least, we want to make sure you have the best information possible when it comes to deciding to put solar on your home or participate in a program like that. And then after that, what's underlined there, solar rights or energy rights. We also do lobbying. We have a C4. We keep very specific, very focused on solar, rooftop solar. We don't get into like environment so much. We don't get into other things. We stay focused on trying to make sure that you have the opportunity to do what you want, produce your own energy at your house, and make sure that the laws are lined up so that you can do what you want with solar on your home. We're in 15 states. We've helped over 6,000 families go solar. I think we just crossed the 50 megawatt mark, which is pretty big, especially when you're talking about individual solar arrays all over the country. We're mostly on the east side of the country, starting to get into the west, but we're growing too because there's a big need right now for solar in the country. And here in Ohio, that actually breaks out to be about 500 solar arrays in the state, 3 megawatts, 7 million invested. We're saving people over the course of the life of that system about $10 million so far. Jobs, and also obviously carbon mitigation is a byproduct of solar. There's no carbon produced once those solar panels are operational on your roof. So what we'll be talking about today, well, we kind of talked about this. We're helping people go solar, fight for the energy rights. The 3 things we'll be talking about today: solar technology, the economics, basically, what does it mean for you? What does it mean kind of in a larger, what's going on with the solar industry more broadly, but what does it mean for your budget? How do you go solar as an individual, and what does it cost, basically? And then a little bit about the co-op, this model that we were working with the county to help people go solar right here at home. So we'll jump right into it. And I'll pause between these sections too if you have questions, and you can kind of give me those questions then if you want, or just stop me, raise your hand, and I'll be glad to explain some of this, because this might be new to some folks, might be very old hat to others. So when I say solar, I mean photovoltaic solar. That's the kind of solar that are these panels that go on your roof, and they sit on your roof, and they generate electricity. There's other types of solar energy out there. You can get solar heating for your home, or passive solar, which means your home is just oriented the right direction so that your home is being heated when it needs to be heated by the sun, and during the winter or during the summer months, it's avoiding the sun in order to stay cool. But we're focused specifically on the type of solar that produces energy for your home. And the most basic component of that solar array or solar system is going to be the solar panel. Each panel is about 3 feet by 5 feet. You've seen them probably on roofs or in fields full of solar. Sometimes it can be a little bit bigger, maybe 7 feet by 3 feet for an industrial size. They're usually composed of 60 to 72 of these individual solar cells that are just thin wafers of silicon, which is basically made from sand. It's just a material that when the sun strikes it, it creates just a tiny little bit of electrical current. When you string them all together in series like that, you can actually generate enough energy to power your home through a small array that's probably 20 panels or less could power the average home here in Northeast Ohio. The array on my roof is about, I think it's 18 or 19 panels. Keep forgetting, I should go up there and count. Anyway, it produces it's a 6 kilowatt size array. It produces anywhere from 6 to 8 megawatt hours per year. That's about the amount of energy my wife and I consume. I have a home in Lakewood. How big is your array, Dave?
17 in Lakewood, 18 in Avon.
Oh, so big array. And you have more electric appliances as well. I have fewer electric appliances. So you have an electric stove. So when you're looking to size a system, you're always basing it on this, what you need, the amount of electricity that you're using through the course of the last year. So anyway, those are solar panels. They're the very most basic component of a solar system. You put those into, you line them up, connect them in series or parallel, depending on what you're trying to do. You'll get a solar array. The solar arrays are what go on your roof and produce solar energy. In fact, here's some gentlemen installing one on a roof on a project. That is an asphalt roof. It's at a pretty high grade, but it seems to be working just fine. What they're attaching that solar to the roof with is called a racking system. Most racking systems work where the penetrations are covered by one layer of the asphalt shingle, so that there is no exposed penetrations, making it kind of naturally waterproof, but of course they're sealed. And most, if not all installers at this point, offer a workmanship warranty, which includes roof penetrations for a certain period of time. So it'd be for 7 years, 10 years, 25 years, depending on the installer and what they're willing to offer. And panels themselves are warranted anywhere from 25 now to 30, some even 35-year warranties on panels, on production and on manufacturing, meaning that they'll guarantee to produce what they produce on day one at, say, 80 or 90% on year 30. So you can actually look at your system, and if 25 years down the road, you're at 75% which you made on day one, you can go to the company and say, hey, I need new panels, and they're obligated to give you new panels that would produce at least that 80%. Here's another type of a racking system. This is on a standing seam metal roof. What's nice about this type of racking is there's no penetrations. The standing seams, the racking system clamps to each standing seam. Great for like barn roofs, things like that. There's other types of flat roof mounting where there's ballasted. The systems are weighted to the roof with those half slab cinder blocks. That's probably the most common on flat roofs. It's just ballasted. There's no roof penetrations. They sit on the roof. They're weighted and they're rated so that they're tilted in a way that they're not going to be caught by the wind. And they sit there and they're perfectly fine. And a solar array, especially even a weighted solar array, is going to weigh less than whatever the snow rating for that roof is. Of course, you're gonna have to make sure that the rating of your roof is gonna, snow plus solar would be what it would need to be. But when you get to that scale, when you get to that size, there'll be absolutely required some kind of architectural review that needs to be stamped off by the city or by county or whatever entity it is. Here it's the cities mostly. And same thing for most municipalities. In fact, we have the assistant service director here for the city of Middleburg Heights, and there's a process here that's relatively straight. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And you do some kind of architectural review, right?
Not even an architectural review, just needs a structural load review, and then all the work's got to be done by a certified registered.
Yeah. So
obviously not outbound product.
Yep, very straightforward, but a good standard, I think, to maintain. So that makes sense. Any questions on that so far? It's a little bit of material. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here. And Fatima, you'll tell me if there's anything in Zoom. I can't see the Zoom.
Yeah,
while-
I will. I will let you know whenever you take a pause.
Okay, thank you. Another option for folks is ground mount. Some municipalities allow these, some don't, especially like out in more rural areas. This is much more popular. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
Difficult is it to replace the roof?
Difficult. It's expensive. It just costs. Solar it can be removed and put back on a roof. No real problem in the actual doing of it. Every solar installer has a method or has a formula for how much it's going to cost. It could be by panel, it could be by kilowatt, could be by how much it costs to begin with. It could be anywhere from $500 to $2,500, depending on the size of the system. Have that system removed, placed in your garage, then you have somebody come out, remove the roof. Now, people do that. In fact, we had somebody in Cleveland Heights a couple of years ago who's like, I need solar now, and sure, they put it on an old roof, and it was obviously structurally fine, just the shingles had to come off. In a couple of years, she's gonna have to pull that off, and she was fine with it and paying to have the roof replaced. And anyway, I highly recommend that you have at least 10 to 15 years life left on the roof, if not much more. Our roof was put on in 2007. It was a really solid roof, though, really high quality asphalt roof. And I got my solar installed in 2018, finished in 2019. So I felt really good about having about 20 years left on my roof. Just for thoughts. So ground mount works some places. Again, more for rural areas. And it's about the same cost actually, because there's just not too much structure involved above the actual array. So, and it works just fine. There are more components than just the solar panels themselves and the racking system. You also need an inverter. This is the piece of equipment that converts that direct current energy that your solar panels are creating to alternating current that could be used in your home. So there's basically two methods that could be done. One's through a string inverter, which is a big box that go in your basement. Not a big box, about yay big, attaches to the wall. In my basement, in my case, it could be in a garage, somewhere dry. And then that string inverter would actually then convert that energy all at one place. There's another string inverter. That's actually my inverter, and one of the most common inverters. That's a SolarEdge string inverter. You have these things called optimizers, which are just little plugs that go in the back of every solar panel. It allows every panel to be controlled and monitored individually. All string inverters anymore come with my little tiny the optimizers that go on the back of every panel. It's just a way that the system can be monitored and controlled best. This is what I have. This is what a lot of people have. I think the more modern way now to do it, that's becoming even more popular, is called micro inverters. Those are actually power inverters that go in the back of every single panel. So instead of having this box in your basement, you'd have little inverters on every panel, and they would convert that DC to AC right on your roof. And then there's a wire coming down off the roof straight into your electrical panel or sub panel. So those are just two ways of doing it. We'll get into the co-op in a little bit, but generally in the co-op, there's an offering of either or. People just have a preference sometimes. Personally, I like the string inverters. It works for me, less points of failure. And I can kind of monitor it. I know it's in my basement where it's going to be nice and dry. But I'd say more people tend now anymore to lean towards micro inverters, because if one dies, you just replace the one instead of having to replace the whole box. So there's reasons back and forth. Any questions on this, kind of how the AC/DC stuff works? Okay, because we'll build on that. The next thing is the electrical panel. Like I said, that energy either comes out of your string inverter or the micro inverters on your roof and comes down into your house, into the electrical panel. You want to make sure the electrical panel has enough space for a couple of breakers for the solar array, and that mine's actually 100 amp, and they were managed to just barely squeeze my solar array in there. 200 amp is really preferable, at the very least, for a solar array, especially you get up into the above 10 kilowatts. I think it's pretty much required. And it has to be modern, right? It can't be the screws. It has to be a modern would pass code. I say your electrical at the very bare minimum has to pass code. You're gonna have somebody's gonna be in there. They're gonna be looking at this stuff. And if not, you can certainly all installers have an electrician that works for them. They can either quote you or get somebody to come in there and swap out whatever equipment would need to be replaced to make it work at your cost. Of course, it's not going to be included in the solar array. That's a la carte sort of thing. So let me move this real quick. that's pretty much it. So a couple of terms that are really important. In fact, pretty critical to understanding how solar works and energy in general. Most people know this, but there's kilowatts and kilowatt hours, right? Kilowatts is what something's generating every second. Kilowatts is also like a rating. These light bulbs in here are probably LEDs. They're probably 30-watt light bulbs. So you hear watts used in terms of sizing systems and sizing different things that use power or create power. And then you have kilowatt hours. That's how much energy something produces over hours of time, right? That's what your electrical bill is in, is kilowatt hours, how much energy you're using over time. So we have a system here that's a 4.2 kilowatt hour system. Just for size, you put a little shadow man so you kind of see how big it is. Those panels we'll assume are 300-watt panels each. They're rated at 300 watts each. You add them all together, you get 4.2 kilowatts. If you left this system out in the sun at around noon for 1 hour, you're going to produce 4,200 kilowatt hours of energy. So over the course of a day, maybe, if it's a nice bright day, you might produce 25 kilowatt hours at a maybe April, May, a very sunny day, right? In the winter, you're not going to produce as much because the sun's a little bit lower in the sky, but it all averages out. And we know exactly what a solar array produces. And those are the numbers they use, those really solid, scientific, proven over years and years and years numbers that installers use and we use to make the projections and make the financial models that make this work, and kind of you can then budget it into your life. In fact, on your handout there, you'll see a little box that'll get into the solar economics here in a minute. There is a secret sauce, though, to all of this that makes it all work and kind of helps this whole system pan out financially for most folks. So we talked a little bit about the solar array on the roof, how that produces energy. The solar inverter converts it so you can use it in your home. The electrical panel, which needs to be upgraded, needs to, but it's generally fine. Your panel, if you're up to code, is going to be fine for solar in most cases. Then once you get to beyond the panel, you need a bidirectional meter. Those come with the solar array. The utility gives you a bidirectional meter, and you can actually put solar back out onto the grid. So let's say it's at noon, you got that solar array producing all that energy. Maybe you're not using all of it at once. You can buy a battery backup and store that energy in a battery. That's fine. That's extra cost, but you can certainly do that. B, what you can do is connect to the utility and sell that energy back to the grid. So when you're producing more energy during the day, it's going back to the grid. And when the sun's gone at night, your solar array is not going to be producing energy. You're using energy off the grid. So you have a meter that goes backwards and forwards. And wherever that meter stops at the end of the month, that's how much you're going to be charged. So basically, it's an accounting mechanism. It's using the grid as an accounting mechanism to determine how much you're going to pay or how much the utility owes you in a given month. And for me, in the summertime, at a 6 kilowatt size array, I'm actually net positive over the summer months on energy. And in the winter time, I'm net negative, and I use those credits that I banked during the summer months to pay my utility bill. So I have a couple months of free energy, even though there's no sun. And then I end up paying a little bit right about now when my credits are all gone. And then every year there's a true up period at the end of July that actually kind of evens it all out again and kind of resets that clock. So you can, and then if you're owed anything in July, they'll give you a check. So I get a $20 check. Do you get a check at all?
I have a check, but I've only had 3 bills in 2 years.
Wow. So you're like, you're
Enough credits that I eat into them, and this is my, like you said, this time of year.
yeah, starting to pay again. Yeah.
I have to pay for the next 2 years and then start going.
2 months. Yeah, that's kind of how, and it's, again, I say it's a secret sauce because without this, solar becomes harder to make the economics work, because what happens to that power, what do you do? But that's when you buy a battery and it gets expensive. With what we call net metering, this whole system is called net metering. We're able to actually make things pencil out pretty well for folks. So any questions on this idea or this thought? It's kind of a big concept. It took me a minute when I first heard it to really get it through my brain, how it worked. Yes, this would, net metering would work for homeowners. Net metering works for businesses too. Any array that has the meter where you're producing the solar energy, net metering will work. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Is First Energy and both power, do they both participate?
Great question. Yep, they do. And they're, for all intents and purposes, comparable. There's a slightly different way. Actually, First Energy accrues the credits by kilowatt no, accrues the credits by a dollar amount, and CPP, Cleveland Public Power, accrues that by a kilowatt hour. But it's the same idea, just different mechanisms.
Can you also touch on that metering? I don't know if it's by state or if it's by each utility.
Sure.
Power or whatever, like 50 cents on the dollar right now, I think, is that statewide?
Yeah, so the power that you're actually, so the power you're actually then selling to the grid, or the credit you're getting, is pretty close to, it's called full retail rate, but it's about 50 cents. It's about it's not like 100% of the distribution and generation. There's still fixed costs. So basically, even though I produce enough energy at my home to cover all of my energy throughout the year, my solar array produces, let's say, 7 megawatt hours per year, and I use 7 megawatt hours per year. I still pay a little bit every year because I'm still covering some of those surcharges and things that are on my bill, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that's a good question.
The billing, are you talking about the generation fee it covers, or like you just said?
Volumetric, yeah, everything that has to do with volume. There are riders, there are other things that are built in. Your demand, peak demand, businesses pay like probably pay pretty high peak charges or demand charges. What's nice about peak and demand charges are solar will help shave those peaks too. So it kind of helps you save a little bit, because usually, at least for cities and things, and if school districts, you're using a lot of energy when it's hot with the chillers and all the things that take a lot of power. Solar will help shave that peak. We've noticed that. So I'm also a councilman in the city of Lakewood. We did solar on 4 of our buildings, and they help shave our peaks a little bit. Not a lot, but enough to make a few $100 difference per facility per month. Yeah, good questions. Yeah, and so every municipality that has a public utility doesn't have to have net metering, but Cleveland Public Power does. And that's the only real big public utility around here. Chagrin Falls does as well, and they're like the second biggest around here. Yeah, any other questions? So this is just the math, right? So an example, you used 300 kilowatt hours of grid energy through the year, but you also exported, so you generated 200 kilowatt hours. The amount of electricity you'd be paying for is 100 kilowatt hours. So yeah, it reduces your bill directly, and you're also getting credit at like that's somewhere between 0.5 and 0.7. If you really want to do the math, it breaks down, and that's residential. Business is a little bit different. So what makes a good roof, right? What makes a good roof for solar? There's a couple of things. One is the roof direction. The only direction that really doesn't work for which way your roof faces in Northeast Ohio is north facing, but it's a latitude a little too far north. So don't get quite enough sun on the north side of the roof. So east, west, south. South is best. East, west work fine. Mine's west. East, west facing. I have solar panels on both east, west. Yours is south, right? Oh, yours east. So you're in that same sort of boat. Shading, you want to make sure that there's no really obtrusive shading issues. Some shading's okay, but a lot of shading isn't. And the solar installer, in fact, we do a roof review. Valerie used to do the roof reviews at one point for us. And those will actually allow us to see your roof and give you a sense whether your roof's going to have a shading issue or not before we move too far into the process. So a lot of people will sign up and want to do solar, but they didn't really realize the roof wasn't oriented right, didn't have the space, they had the wrong shading. So we as an organization kind of try to go in and address some of those things and weed folks out pretty early on. And then, obviously, like I said, if you have enough space, you want to make sure you have enough space to do the amount of solar you want to do. It can be pretty disheartening when you have a little house, but you have it's all electric and you can only do 5 kilowatt hours. You need a 15, you want to make sure, but there's also high efficiency panels that pack more watts into 1 square foot, basically, that are just a little bit more expensive that you could get for smaller roofs too. So, and then I should mention some municipalities have restrictions and HOAs, homeowners associations, historic designated areas, sometimes depending on the municipality and the district that has authority over that have restrictions on what you can do and where you can put solar. So batteries, this is why you're here. I don't have much for you, unfortunately. So what happens if the grid goes down? If the grid goes down and you have a solar array, some people think that you're going to be fine. You don't need anything, solar is going to produce your energy for you. You're safe, you protected yourself from the blackout. Not necessarily. You actually need a battery to do that. If you just have a solar array and the grid goes down, it has to shut off so that you're not going to backfill the grid because you're tied to the grid. With solar energy, And it could really screw up things, and it could really even potentially hurt somebody who's trying to fix the grid, right? So the power line goes down in your neighborhood, power goes out, you're still pushing energy out into the grid. It could really screw with things. So your system has to isolate itself at the very least from the grid. And at that point, you need a battery in order to even out the peaks and the peaks and valleys and the solar energy you're producing. So there are some inverters out there that have small batteries built into them. One of them is called Sunny Boy inverters that you can get that would actually allow you to isolate and have a little bit of energy, maybe a few minutes of power, maybe an hour if you're really, really efficient of power through a blackout. But we highly recommend that you look into a battery backup. Some things to consider, if you're in an area of frequent outages, you have critical loads at home, medical equipment, pumps, things like that. Emergency and disaster preparedness is also a reason why you would want to get a battery. They could be expensive. I was looking at Tesla Powerwalls, which is probably the most preeminent Tesla, battery out there right now. They use, a lot of them are recycled Tesla batteries because you can get much more use out of a home battery than you can a car battery. Those are still expensive. They're $15,000+ for a Tesla Powerwall. So, it does add significant cost, but they're solid. They have warranties, and they could be a set it, forget it thing. It could be something you'd actually interact with to tell when to store power, when to dispense power. Can certainly be a help. I tell you what, some places that have even just uneven power. There's some neighborhoods and streets in Lakewood that have very, very strange power situations over on the west side, where a battery would certainly help just stabilize their situation. Would be well worth the expense, I think. Yes.
From a public safety point of view, we have a structure fire or partial structure
Mhm.
collapse. We'll work with First Energy to get the disconnect going. We got a big problem with solar.
There's a bylaw, there's a big red switch on the outside. It has to be, you flip it off, then you're safe from the. Now, I think Orange, the community of Orange, is one of the first cities that has a ordinance around like what to do about batteries and what you can't, like, they have setbacks and things for the actual battery installation, which I think is pretty cool. It's something I want to look at when we do. Yeah. We did a presentation out there a year and a half ago. They had just instituted it. Because I think batteries, who knows if they've got a ton of power in them and if they're still distributing energy to the house, and so you'd have to be careful. But fire departments are starting to train on EVs and batteries and things too, so they're becoming more aware of the issue.
The batteries lithium ion or something?
Mostly, yeah. There's sealed lead acid as well. Those are very rare. I think the more DIY guys like the sealed lead stuff. But anything that's professionally installed anymore is going to be lithium, which is explosive on its own, right? But you're right. I think there should be some real thought, and it goes into especially municipal codes around batteries. And solar is pretty well taken care of with the disconnects, and as long as the disconnect's thrown, solar, as long as you disconnect the anode from the diode, the positive from the negative, the solar becomes inert. There's no potential necessarily. So good questions. Here's another guide. Something to think about when sizing a battery. I'll go over this just briefly. Is you want to look at your critical loads. You want to look at how long those loads you want to power. So when is there going to be, think about the outages you've had maybe over the last couple of years, if that's the reason you want to get a battery, and figure out kind of how much time you're going to want to spend up and how many things you want to spend up at that time. So maybe then you can figure out how many megawatt hours or kilowatt hours you're going to need, and you can build that into the type of battery and the size of battery that you're going to get. So Tesla Powerwall is 13.5 kilowatt hours of storage. It's a good sort of, the LG Chems are 9 kilowatt hours, I believe. There's different sizes to different size batteries. So you're going to want to look at, what you're going to need and for how long, and that's going to help you size. So you do not want to necessarily go larger, because the larger you go, the more expensive it's going to be. And you don't want to go smaller, because what's the point? You can't power the things you want to power. Obviously, you're not going to want to power your air conditioner or your electric dryer, things that you don't necessarily need. So you're going to have a sub panel that would then sort of, the same idea with the generator, basically, except you're also thinking about volume of the load, not just the capacity. So generators are rated in how much energy they can put out at a given time. Batteries actually have an amount they can put out at a given time, a wattage, and a storage capacity. So that's all in this guide, though. This is a great little guide. breaks it down, actually has some like worksheets and things in there you can kind of go through and add and figure out exactly what size battery you're going to need. And it's good to do this on your own too before going to an installer, because they may try to like sell you more than you need, right? Their goal is to make money in a lot of cases. Some of them are great. The ones we work with, I think, are great. There's some out there that aren't so great. Try to figure out what you need beforehand. It's really helpful to when you go to the market. Any questions on batteries? Batteries are fun. I want one eventually, but I don't need one right now because I live by the old Lakewood Hospital and we have a very, very, very solid overbuilt grid. Oh, good. More batteries, some optional material there. We kind of went over a lot of this stuff. We'll move on. So some frequently asked questions, warranties, we touched on that a little bit. Panels, 30 years, 25 years for most inverters. Home insurance. Generally, most of her home insurance, you don't have to call. I have State Farm. I called State Farm, said, hey, I got a solar array. That's fine. That increased the sort of value of the home to be rebuilt value, and that may increase your premium, may not, depends. Didn't have to get a rider. Some of you do have to get a rider. It really depends on the insurance company. Maintenance, there's virtually no maintenance. I'll say virtually because if you're in an area that's heavily forested, we highly recommend squirrel guards and things to keep animals and rodents out from eating the wires under the panel. Sometimes they like nesting up there and living under there. So that would be the only real maintenance thing I can think of. And the only calls I ever get are because an animal like electrocuted itself or something. And then they had to have the people come out and fix the panel. If you're in inner city Cleveland, bullets falling sometimes. That's rare. I've never had that, but Yellow Light, our installer, has had to replace bullet holes in panels before.
But the snow load, the actual weight, and then actually the snow on top of the.
Great question. Great question. I wish I had that. I used to have add that on here. So the weight of the snow, the panels are really, really rigid. They can take hail up to usually softball size. We say, and it's pretty well established, that solar panels can take more abuse than a typical asphalt roof. So they're actually doing a good job to protect and even cool your asphalt roof a little bit. As far as load, you do want to make sure that when they're installed, you have the capacity in your roof before that ever gets to the point of needing. But the panels themselves certainly can handle whatever you throw at them. And now in terms of producing energy, right. So in terms of producing energy, obviously if they're covered by anything, they're not going to produce anything, or maybe it's a tiny little trickle. So yeah, people asked, and we were told as this part of the presentation, well, that's those slides off, and it still averages to be about the same. I like to test that. So I've had solar now since 2019 solid. So I go back, and we had a really snowy year a couple years back. And I figured out how I looked at every day. I looked at the weather and how the snowfall for Lakewood, Ohio, for every single day, and I figured out how much snow was on the ground. And I lost like 3 or 4 days of production. And one of the most snowy years, I forget if it was 2020 or 2021. It was a really snowy year. And the snow tends to melt off the panels pretty quickly. And once there's a tiny bit of water that slides off, so there's still snow on a lot of roofs around me. I could see snow out of my, office, snow, the roof of my neighbors and the next neighbors through my office. I'm kind of watching the snow melt. Slowly melts, but the snow's already gone on my roof. Now I have an okay rake roof. If it's a flat roof, I think you're probably going to have a few extra days of 0 to no production. But again, we don't have snow sticking around in this part of the country for long enough that really has a huge effect. You can, especially in places that are even further north, they're really prone to snow, do a snow removal process for your panels. We recommend like a RV. There's actually things that are made for your RV to remove snow from. It's like a long stick with this like string that'll help squeegee the snow off. There's really no need to clean panels here in Northeast Ohio. Days like today do a fine job at keeping your panels squeaky clean. In Arizona, there's whole businesses that are developed around cleaning solar panels because they get dusty and produce less and less energy over time. Here, there is no need. Mother Nature does a fantastic job keeping panels relatively clean. So you can clean them. There are some people that do their own panels, but you don't need to. HOAs, we talked a little bit about restrictions. You want to make sure that your HOA doesn't have restrictions. The only restrictions that count anymore are if they're in the deed. Anyone here in an HOA, homeowners association? Yes. So you want to make sure that that's not in the deed. Basically, if they have bylaws that say they can't have solar, those are no longer valid as of last year. So you could put solar, and if they tried to contest it, you could just simply point them to the law, the statute that says they can't unreasonably prohibit solar. But again, that doesn't affect if you have it actually in your deed. It's deed restricted, it doesn't count. You're stuck a little bit. Same deal with historic districts. Yeah.
Could you go over how long the system lasts?
Yeah, so systems, there's a couple components, right? So the component that would wear out the fastest would be the inverter, and that's usually warranted to 25 years. We just did all these homes in Cleveland where like our organization paid for them through a grant, and you got all the systems are warranted for 25 years. And then the panels are warranted to 30 years. So you're pretty good there. And then usually there's a workmanship warranty too, so that if something happened with the roof itself, or there's some hole or some leak, the installer should come out and fix that or deal with that. You're welcome. We'll jump into the solar economics here. Over the course of time, solar's become less expensive by a lot, by orders of magnitude less expensive. Yet there was still solar being installed around here in the 70s and even the 80s and 90s. Some of those arrays are still working. The city of Chagrin Falls, right? That's where they have a public utility in Chagrin Falls. There's schools when solar back in the I think 90s, early 90s, and they want to get new solar on their roofs. That's why they reached out to us. Can we get new solar? We've had these arrays since the 90s, and they're still producing energy from the 1990s. Now, granted, probably not a lot, probably 50% of what they're producing, but still, to have a system up for 30 years and still producing energy that was produced 30 years ago with 30-year-old technology. Today, the technology is much more advanced. The panels are much more rugged, by the way, too. The technologies that they're using for the glass and things are much more rugged, much more resistant to UV degradation and things like that. This says 26% tax credit. That's wrong. It's a 30% tax credit. Yeah, I know. I obviously didn't catch that. So there is a tax credit now, 30%. It's a big deal. It means that you're going to get 30% back in your taxes. It is non-refundable, so you have to have some kind of tax liability. You can take it over multiple years. Pretty big deal. It's one of the things driving the cost of solar down and increasing the amount of solar that's being installed around the country. Another thing is this reduction in just system cost components has come down a lot. Soft cost remains pretty high, and that's why our organization really exists, why we've sort of thrived, is we really do help reduce that soft cost, or a lot of the cost of the system is right now. By pulling you all together, by doing this RFP, we actually issue a request for proposal out to all the solar installers in Ohio, basically, and say, hey, we got 50 people that want to go solar through us. Give us your best deal, give us your bottom dollar. And they know it's guaranteed work. They know they don't have to go buy leads. And it saves them some money. So we're able to save a little bit of money for folks, which is great. And I'll show you what that is. So also wrong, I'm sorry. But here, this is right. So here's a pricing example. This should match pretty closely to what's in your sheet there. If not, it's pretty close. This is pulled off our website, and we're always adjusting the prices too as the market shifts and changes. So at an average of $2.70 a watt, let's say you get a 10 kilowatt size system, which could cost you $27,700 with tax, with a little bit of extra. I don't know why there's $700 thrown in there. So it's $2.77 really is what it is, isn't it? So then you're getting actually $8,000 back in your taxes. And again, you could spread that out. So if you don't have that tax liability in 1 year, you can take it over 2 years. So this year, maybe you take $5,000, next year, you take the other $3,100 of tax incentive. Then the net cost of the system is going to be closer to $19,000. The estimated savings on that system of 10 kilowatts is going to be about $1,508 per year. That tracks. My system saving me about, I looked at it last year. I haven't done this past year, 2021. It saved me $990 something compared to the other years before my solar. So you can expect to save probably a little more than that now, especially with energy going up. The higher energy prices go, the more you save technically, because you're going to be pretty much fixing your energy costs that are produced by that solar for the next 30 years. So as energy goes up, your solar stays the same. Over the course of time, the system's going to pay itself off roughly about now in 11 years, 12 years with that 30% tax credit. So that's where you're at. Maybe faster. I think it's going to be faster because of the energy costs going up.
That tax credit one time or ongoing for life system?
It's one time, but again, it can be taken over multiple. Yes, it's 30% on the total cost of the system. So that's the money you'll get back in your taxes, essentially. Should you have the liability? Now you can sell the liability. Shouldn't say that. I think you can sell the liability. These rules are brand new, by the way, which is great. The ITC investment tax credit's been around since 2012, 2011, 2012. But the rules about how it's applied have gotten a little bit broader. It's gotten better through the passage of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act or the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah. So there's Congress fortunately passed some good legislation this past year that helps reinforce this. And that means this 30% tax credit sticking around to 2032. So it'll be around for a couple of years.
So roughly after 10 years, you will cover your investment and everything after that's free.
Yes. Yes.
In Solar United, they tend to be fairly conservative in these estimates, like they use a 2%, I think,
Yeah.
estimation of how utility prices will escalate. But so they try to be conservative, so they're not like over promising you savings. So it could be better than this, given like the incentive prices, rising prices of electricity.
Yeah. And we know that First Energy went to buy a bid for electricity. They bought it at $120 something, $125, $124 megawatt hour. This past for starting June this year. So right now you're only paying about 6 cents a kilowatt hour for the generation side. That's going to probably double this summer, and then it's going to go down a little bit towards the end of the year because they purchased again at $90 or $80. So it went from 50 to 125 down to 90. So it really is a volatile market right now of energy. So solar is a good way to fix that volatility. There's no volatility when you're generating from the sun. And we know the sun's going to shine pretty consistently at a consistent pace, a consistent pattern. That's another question we get. There's no sun in Ohio. Look at today, look at the last 3 days. Well, yeah, that's all built into the model. We know it's been this way. So the climate may be changing, but it's not changing at a pace that's going to change the modeling of the solar of the solar modeling. So you're going to get basically, if you want to write this down, if you're a wonk like me, you're going to get 1,200. Let me say this right. If you install 1 kilowatt of solar, you're going to get 1,200 kilowatt hours of solar per year out of that 1 kilowatt hour installed, right? So you can kind of factor that in. So you have a system that's 6 kilowatts times that 1,200, you're going to get about 7 megawatt hours per year. That's about what I get, right? So it's going to be the same every year. It's going to average out. Some years a little bit more, some years a little less. Over the course of that 30 years, it's going to be absolutely spot on to that projection because it evens out over time. And then financing is also something that we think about and talk about quite a bit. So a 5 kilowatt size system just gives you some sense of what at an interest rate of 4%, 30% down, what it would cost. And that's all in your little guide there too. Understanding these interest rates are probably low right now. We can't print things to keep up with the changing interest rate structure. But actually, there's a couple things to look at when it comes to financing systems to loans. One of the best things we have here going is the Cuyahoga County Help Loan. There's no quick link to it, but if you just Google Cuyahoga Help Loan, boom, you're there. It'll pull up. This is actually it works both as a collateralized loan and a non-collateralized. So you can use it as a HELOC loan. So you basically go to Key Bank or Huntington Bank and say, hey, I want to use the county help loan. They'll pull out a form out of their desk and they'll have you fill it out and they'll submit it to the county. If you qualify, then you're going to get like a 3% discount on your home equity loan, essentially a line of credit, or it could be an uncollateralized loan. And then you're going to get a 3% reduction on that. Of course, it'll be a higher base interest rate. So maybe you're going to get a 6.5% interest rate loan on a HELOC type product. If you got good credit, this will bring it down to a 3.5% APR loan. Pretty good deal. Yeah.
If you are a resident of the city of Cleveland, they have a restoration loan through Key Bank and they're federal. It's 1.4%.
Still.
Solar is covered.
Yeah. Is that through Home Heritage?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was my good. I just threw this on here too. That's a great, and I actually called it to confirm that. Yeah, you're a step ahead of me, but that's great. So the Cleveland Restoration Society has a Home Heritage Loan Program. Lakewood's not a part of it, but I want to be part of it. Yeah. So that bums me out because I think it's a great thing and people are using it in Cleveland to save a lot of money. Just go to Cleveland Restoration Society or Google Home Heritage Loan Program. It's right there. It's on Cleveland's website as well if you're in Cleveland. So there's other, so the state of Ohio says something called EcoLink. We have the county help loan, which really I think supplants the need for the state loan, which is a little bit harder to get and fewer banks know about. And either go to the help loan and the Cleveland Home Heritage Loan Program if you're in Cleveland. And if go to this website too, I'm not sure Middleburg, is Middleburg? Yeah, Middleburg takes part in it too. You guys are ahead of us in Lakewood. So great options for financing systems. Of course, you can go through the installer. Be very careful when going through the installer, just because they're always going to charge you. There'll be a cash price for the system, and likely there'll be a credit price for the system. I don't know how they get away with it, but just be very careful. Read the fine print when it comes down to installer financing, and it's usually unsecured stuff. Clean Energy Union, Clean Energy Credit Union is one of the organizations we work very closely with because they're actually FDIC insured bank, and they're very forward about their rates and what it costs to do a system, or what it costs to finance a system. So we appreciate that, and they've been good partners of ours. So take a look at them too. Any questions about that? Financing, then the numbers, how it all pencils out. Everyone doing okay online? People still with us?
Yes, yeah, everyone's doing okay.
Thanks.
Thank
All right, so the last piece of this puzzle here is how the co-op works. So basically, I think I talked about a little bit. I give you teasers this whole time about the co-op. We opened it last year. It's gonna go through the end of March. You guys can join. Anybody can join. We've got a form actually there, and if you want one, we'll pass them around later. You can join the co-op, or you can go to our website to join. What it is a buyer's club. We get a bunch of people together. We go to the installers and say, "Hey, give us your best deal." It's like taking 50 of your friends into any shop and they'll give you a better deal than just one person, basically. And we see that panned out. It really saves about anywhere from 10 to 20, maybe even 30% anymore on what a system costs, because the marketing costs, soft costs, are where the cost of these systems are anymore. And this is just a different way of doing that soft cost, where it's the county's helping pitching in, we're helping pitch in, other grant funded organizations, we're a nonprofit, we're helping pull this together. It really is a good way to go solar. But the very least, even if you don't decide to go solar, you can get a proposal out of the system, and then you don't have to decide to do it. You can free to join, and there's no commitment at the end or any point. You're going to get a proposal from the installer. You can use that to go compare it to other installers. I probably shouldn't say this, but people have gone to install another installer I've been working with. Hey, I got this deal. Can you match it? And they'll match it. That's fine. The whole point is to get you the best deal possible, so we get as much solar on as many roofs as possible. That's the whole point of this thing. This is one way to do it. So just to give you a little bit of schematic about how it works, we get people together, we go to bid. We also do this thing called the selection committee, which we'll be putting together real soon. Love to have you on it, Dave. Where you all get to help select that installer. I'm not the one that picks. Valerie's not the one that picks. The members themselves get to pick the one installer that's going to be used by the whole group. And every installer, every bid that we get is very different. They have different offerings, different warranty periods, totally different product offerings, different prices, different types of roofs they work on or don't work on. And we want your help and input in selecting an installer is going to be right for the group. And at the end of that meeting, you would vote. So you can be part of that. You don't have to be part of that selection process, but we encourage you to participate. I like it when there's lots of people. You got lots of people voting. It's much more fun for me than if it's just a couple of people. But we'll send that email out here really soon too, because the bids are due in January 16th. So, all right. And at the end of the sign up deadline, by that point, solar will be being installed. Once that installer is selected, everybody in the co-op gets an email. Says, hey, we picked the installer, be ready for a call from them, an email from them, and then they'll reach out to you and they'll start working with you. Basically, all they need is your utility bill, and then know kind of what you want out of the system. You want a system that's going to cover 100% of your need. They'll draft your proposal, shoot it to you in an email and say, how's that look? You're like, actually, can you put panels on this side instead of that side? Can you make it smaller? Can you make it bigger? And then you sign it out of the line, and there's different milestone payments like with any other contractor. And that's how that works. And we're there to help too. Feel free to call me anytime during the process to help explain things, or something don't look right. Reach out to me, can explain it. Sometimes the installers have somebody that's new and you know, they're not explaining things properly, or there's something wrong with the proposal, we can certainly work on that with you too. We're here to help you through the process. So that's how that works. And at the end, we have a pizza party. Who doesn't love pizza parties?
I don't remember stepping.
Yeah, I know. COVID killed stuff.
Yeah.
The last one we did was in Kent. And it was literally like we were at the restaurant saying, I don't know, should we be here? This was like February, it was like 2019 or 2020, whenever COVID started. It was like that month. I'm like, I don't know, should we be here doing this? I paid for it, so we were there. Next steps, you can join the co-op. You can go to X. I'm gonna fix this. This is a new format, if you can't tell. You want, I'm like, you all sit and wait.
Well, just in doing that. If you're like unsure about it.
Boom. Cuyahoga.
Like if it's on, you know, and you know, even talk to the installer, but until you sign, you're not obligated to pay it. So like you have to pay it number for the dealer.
I absolutely agree. Even if you're just interested in learning about it, maybe thinking about going down the road or whatever, this is like a great place to learn.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, and this is our whole goal is to, again, just to get solar on as many roofs as we can. So that's about it.
Just to clarify.
I did get that right.
People do want to sign up. It
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily put like this doesn't automatically sign them up.
Nope.
but-
Correct. So if you signed in on the sheet, that's just going to get you on a basically a list. We try not to send too many emails. We'll let you know when co-ops open, when they close, but it's not going to mean you're in the co-op necessarily. So make sure there's an additional form here. If anybody wants to join, we can do that now, or then feel free to use the web link. But that's basically it. Any questions on any of that? The process, the technology? Yes.
I've read somewhere that your electric bill needs to average $100 a month to qualify for solar. Is that
No. Yeah. So it's probably a one solar company that does something specific. Like they want to use solar panels, and they're not going to get the amount of solar on your roof to really justify their lease. So they have to they put some kind of limit on it, would be my guess. So that's one company policy probably. But yeah, no, our solar systems go down all the way down to about 3 kilowatts, which is half the size of my system. And then it starts getting hard for them to justify the cost, basically, or hard for you to justify putting that much overhead into it in order to get only 3 kilowatts. It's only going to produce a couple dollars, $20, $30, $40 a month of value for you. So, there is a lower limit, but it's pretty darn low. If your electric bill is $100 a month on average throughout the course of a year, you're probably using 5 megawatt hours or less per year. So you probably need a system around 5 kilowatt hours, would be my guess. Totally back of the napkin math, but that's well above that 3 kilowatt size limit. So
Related to that, I have a pretty small roof area,
Yeah.
like even smaller, like south facing roof area.
Oh.
Maybe 200, no more than 225 square feet.
okay.
Is there a minimum size to make it worth it?
I think we just need to see the actual roof and see what could be laid out on it. There are setback limits from the edges too that have to be considered. You could do solar on more than one surface. So mine's on 2 surfaces, which is nice. So there's an option there if you have two separate surfaces. Again, it's unfortunate that north surface just really doesn't pencil out here. And there's always going to be a high efficiency option in the co-op too. Again, you're going from a 350, mine are 310 watts to up to 450. So you're adding in a couple 150 extra watts per panel, and definitely boosts the amount of solar you can pack into a smaller space too. So it's worth checking out and figuring out if it's going to work or not. Yeah, it's not a lot of space, but
They can typically just use Google Maps to look at your roof. Worst case scenario, they send a drone out.
in Middleburg, you can put them on the grass in your lawn, right? You can put them anywhere. I just wanted to see your face. No, you cannot do that here in Middleburg. And that makes sense. You don't have enough room to really do. Same thing in Lakewood. You don't have enough room to do ground mount solar anyway. I'm talking about, I see you sitting here, so I think Lakewood whenever Same thing in Avon or anywhere, but you get out of the boonies, it makes a lot more sense.
Do you have any idea how many houses in Lakewood have solar?
About 100. 93, I think. I just got the spreadsheet today or yesterday, day before yesterday, this week. So there's a guy in Lakewood, Tom Smith, great guy. And he like as soon as January 1st comes, the first day that the building department's open, he's calling every building department and around. He probably called you, I called your department to get to pull all the solar numbers, solar permit numbers. And he's really good about that. So it's fun to see who's doing what companies are working on what areas. So yeah.
I'm surprised by that number because I don't see them.
Mhm.
No, my panel's on the back of the house. You can't see my
Well,
panels.
There's 19,000 residential structures in Lakewood, so 19,100 arrays. Not a lot, but we'll get there, I think. Yeah. How many structures in Middleburg?
5,000 homes.
5,000 homes. So it's a lot, even if you did 100, it's still kind of a drop in the bucket. We need to get over that hump. We need to get the information on it. Maybe then put solar on your roof, tell your neighbors, spread the word. Be helpful. Any other questions? Anything else before we part? Oh, yeah.
Thanks. Where in that 8-month calendar that you've got is the roof visit? That there would be a roof visit?
Yeah, the roof review is actually digital virtual because we use satellite imagery basically, or aerial imagery. And that's at the very beginning. You sign up, it'll be the couple of days, that day or that week.
And that's how you guys not be installed.
Correct, because we want to, before we turn that list over, before we put you in the list, we want to make sure that you're not going to get disqualified in 3 months, sitting there waiting for your solar, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, my roof doesn't. We want to do that right away so that you know whether your roof's can. I think same thing in a case where we want to make sure we see roofs that are small now, or we're taking notes on whether that's going to be something that, and then we'll want to talk to you. So, we can connect offline and just make sure that you're not waiting for nothing.
There are some roofs that get reviewed by Solar United where it's not quite clear based on Google, maybe Google images and stuff, right? And then they'll send the homeowner a message like, maybe you're qualified, we're not sure, like you were talking to the installer. So sometimes it's very clear that you're qualified, sometimes it's very clear that you're not. And sometimes if you fall in that middle range, they'll still include you in the co-op and give you an opportunity to get to the installer.
Do you mind sharing 2 or 3 of the installers that you have gone with in the past?
Yeah, so if you go to our website, they're there. They're listed. We have it archived. And every installer we've used is on our yellow light is our current installer. Better Together was the installer when I went solar. Better Together. There's a couple others. You have to go to the website. There's also a place where we've started a solar ethics pledge here in Ohio, which is actually pretty neat. So if you go to solarethics.org, and it's in combination with Green Energy Ohio, pretty neat. And there's a list of the solar installers who have taken that pledge. And I think so there's Better Together. There's a lot of companies here that Solar Freedom, people we work with, Yellow Light we work with, Third Sun we work with. So it's a good place, good clearinghouse if you just want names of places. So there you have it. Again, $3 per watt. So you want to look at if you get a quote, it's, oh, we're going to do a 10 kilowatt size system on your roof, and we're going to charge you X amount of dollars. Divide the amount by the kilowatts to get your dollars per watt, right? And then to give you a sense, you don't want to be too far above $3 a watt. I wouldn't think you'd want to be above $3 a watt, even though inflation and all that. I have not seen any bids yet. But when I do, I'll have a better sense of what, because we're in a new era. But again, $3 a watt, I'd be surprised if we're at over $3 a watt.
Any supply chain issues?
There were, they're not right now. They've, like most industries, they've sort of figured out how to buy, when to buy. And we're talking to install. We talked to Yellow Light today about the last rounds of the co-op, and they're already talking about like, all right, how big is this co-op going to be? Like, we're bidding. What's our buy going to look like? When do you think our buy is going to happen? So they're already kind of figuring out what to do. And they're, way more now they used to not even think about it. Now they're thinking about it a few months. And what's another good advantage of this? They get a group of, they win this contract, and right away they're like, all right, there's 60 people here. We know that this many are going to go solar. We'll go ahead and put the order in for, $500,000 of solar panels, or $250,000 of solar panels, whatever it's going to be. And because there's only a couple offerings, they know that most people are going to go with the base offering, and they can kind of adjust Still probably an 8-week lead time, 6 to 8 week lead time on most installations. You sign up with the co-op, get your proposal, you sign the dotted line. Still might be a month or two before you get that install. That didn't used to be the case. That's still, I think it's more of a labor thing right now, and just keeping up with the work. So yeah, those are some of the issues.
Typically just a 1-day install. Right?
Yeah, well, once it happens, it's like, boom, it's done. Which is, and then most cities, like Lakewood's pretty good. I'm sure Middleburg's great with doing the inspections, and smaller, these burbs are relatively quick about it. Cleveland can be hit or miss. Usually they're pretty good too. You know, we've had some nightmare situations in like metropolitan areas, Dallas, things like that. But here things go pretty smoothly on the permitting inspection side. Any other questions?
Sorry to pause
Yeah,
you. We have
go ahead.
last minute on the web. We just have a last minute on the webinar. It's going to go 7 sharp. So we have 3 participants here and no
Okay.
questions.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone online. I'll let you guys go then. And then if nobody else has any questions, we'll call it a day. We made it to 7. Yay. I'll stop sharing. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time.